Everyone's ready to go? Okay, I'll call this meeting of the Architectural Review Committee to order. We'll go ahead and do roll call.
Do a roll call. Committee member Hunter.
Present.
Committee member Palmer.
Here.
Vice Chair Ostovar.
Here.
Chair Pauly.
Here.
And committee member Turgeon.
Here.
And we have committee members Sanders and Turgenza currently absent. Staff today is Planning Manager Hill, Principal Planner Roveri, and myself, Recording Secretary Argenbright. And I will also remind the public how to participate, and information on participating in this meeting and providing public comment, including remotely by Zoom or telephone, is on this meeting's agenda, which is online at isearchmonterey.org. Remote commenters will be muted until it is their turn to speak, and a timer will be shown on the screen. If you are connected on Zoom, the timer is accurate with no delay. In the chamber, we recommend keeping phones and devices muted to prevent audio interference with the meeting. Thank you for participating in your city government.
All right, and with that, we'll go ahead and open up the consent agenda. Is there any member of the public or the committee that would like to discuss a consent item? Oh, this is the consent agenda item. So anything that's actually on the agenda, we'll get to that in a few minutes.
And there are no attendees online with their hands raised.
All right. Seeing no one that would like to speak, I guess we'll move on to minutes.
Actually, the minutes are the consent agenda. So we would just go ahead and take a vote on the consent agenda.
All right.
If there's no comments on the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes from December 4th, 2024.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? One abstention.
Just to clarify, that was a second by Chair Pauly or Ostovar? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the minutes are approved. Any public comments for items that were not on the agenda? See no comments, no one online?
No, there are no attendees online with their hands raised.
Okay. So that wraps up the consent agenda, and we'll move on to our first public appearance.
Hello, ARC. My name is Fernanda Roveri, Principal Planner for the City of Monterey, and I will present to you 890 McClellan Avenue, application ARP 240127 for preliminary and final architectural review of a first and second story addition at an existing one-story single-family dwelling. The applicant is Aaron Tollefson. The owner is Brent Ty. The zoning district is R15 and it has low density residential general plan land use. And it was found that it is exempt from CEQA. Staff's recommendation is that the ARC approve the architectural review permit as presented by staff. The subject property is 890 McClellan Avenue. It is located in the R15 zoning district of the New Monterey neighborhood. This is the single-family residential district. And as I mentioned, the general plan land use designation for this site is low-density residential. There's an existing one-story single-family dwelling on site, as you can see on this photo. On the left is a view from McClellan Avenue, And on the right is a view of the property from the McClellan Avenue and Pine Street intersection. Adjacent uses are all single-family dwellings across the street and to the back and to the sides of the subject property. I wanted to touch on the public comments that were raised, that were submitted, one on Friday of last week from the 529 Pine Street owner. This shows the view of 529 Pine Street, seen from here's the map. So it is kind of across the street diagonally from 890 McClellan Avenue. And the view that they were referencing to is facing the ocean over 890 McClellan Avenue. And the second public comment that we received, written public comment, was on December 17th, so yesterday, from 515 Pine Street owner. Also concerned about the view over 890 McClellan Avenue. And you can see here that the front of the house at 515 Pine Street. The project description is that the existing first story be retained, and the applicant submitted a letter from a structural engineer that verified that the proposed second story that the first story would be able to bear the weight of the proposed second story. So the first story would not be demolished. And the addition, in the back, on the first story, there would be a 162 square foot storage room. And on the second story, above the existing living area, there would be a 965 square foot master suite, hall closet, and kitchen dining living room. And so in total, it would be about 1,127 square feet. This is the existing site plan on the left. And so this was a topographic survey that was prepared by a surveyor, and it was used as the existing site plan as well. It shows the existing one-story residence. It shows the property lines. And on the right side is the proposed site plan. As I mentioned, the first story would not be demolished. So as you can see, it would be the same footprint as it is now, but there would be a second story added above. The second story is outlined with a dashed line. In the back is that storage room that I mentioned. This is an addition to the first story, only 162 square feet. You can see that the second story is set back 7 feet from the side property line as required by Monterey City Code. However, a projection is allowed for bay windows, and this is a proposed bay window. And again, this shows the 965 square foot second story with the 162 square foot first story storage addition to the back. And I also highlighted the stairs that that an occupant would climb to get above the storage addition, because there's a second story deck proposed there. And on the left is the first floor plan. So no change to the exterior walls. However, the applicant is proposing to remodel the interior. The one thing to note is that there's an existing kitchen in the center of the site of the floor plan here, but the applicant is proposing to make that into the stairway that would lead to the second story. And there would be a new kitchen on the second story. no kitchen on the first story. And so staff highlighted with dashed lines, the second story above the first. And the second story would contain that living, dining, kitchen, open concept area with a hall closet and a master suite. And in the back is that second story deck over the storage room. And there's also a second story deck at the front coming off of the living room that's being proposed. The roof plan they are shed roofs. They would be 4 and 12 slope. And here's the gable cricket for the bay window. And the garage, it would get new roofing, but the slope would match the other slopes. So they would all be 4 and 12 slopes. The north elevation, this would be the view from 880 McClellan Avenue, the neighbor next door on McClellan. And this is again that bay window that is projecting that second story deck at the front and the second story deck at the back. The first story would get new siding and new windows, but the footprint will not change. And this is the south elevation seen from Pine Street. And this is the view that those neighbors that submitted public comments would see. This is the one-story garage, which the footprint would not change. And then the second story seen behind the garage. And this is the west elevation. This is the back of the house. So you're seeing it from the backyard. Again, that bay window is projecting into that 7-foot setback to the second story. And you can see the shed roofs on the proposed second story. The east elevation is the front. So the view from McClellan Avenue. And the second story is where I'm pointing right now. The proposed finishes are modern. The garage door would have a anodized black trim, and the stone veneer, which would be located at the base of the facade, would be gray tones. And the trim around the windows would be the window, I'm not sure what this is called, but this part of the window would be forest green, and the trim color around the windows would be black, and same with the doors. And the cement plaster, there's only one portion of cement plaster proposed. It would be colored taupe, and the wood siding, horizontal wood siding proposed would be a natural wood color. The metal standing seam metal roofing, the color that was presented was forest green. And then this is the railing the look of the railing that is proposed on the decks. The findings for approval, there are 4 of them. The first one is that the proposed siding, form, mass, and architectural style are appropriate for the adjacent neighbors, immediate area, and the city. And the siding would maintain the existing footprint of the first story. This would help preserve open space in the back of the property, and it would preserve the 2-car garage. So off-street parking is very valued in this neighborhood, and preserving the garage is something that would meet our off-street parking requirements and also take cars off of the street. The form is modulated by shed roofs and the decks, the siding materials, the horizontal siding versus the stone veneer, and the contrasting colors. There is two-story massing at 499, 501, 514, and 515 Pine Street. And so there are other residences with 2 stories nearby. And
I'm sorry, you're going to have to wait until after staff presentation. There'll be an opportunity for public comment.
the architectural style would be contemporary. The second finding is that the proposed project will not unreasonably impair the views, privacy, or living environment currently enjoyed by other properties in the vicinity. The project would partially block ocean views at 499, 501, 515, and 529 Pine Street. However, this would be a partial block of the views. So there would still be views available from second stories. And there would still be views available over the McClellan Avenue and Pine Street intersection. And so these are views from 499 Pine Street. It's off the screen here, but the house at 499 is to the right. And there's an arrow pointing to their ocean view over the intersection. And on the left is the proposed project. And this is a view from the corner of the intersection, showing that there's still a view of the ocean here for 499 Pine Street. And this is where the proposed project is located. The views from 501 Pine Street. The first story view, it would directly look at the second story that's being proposed. However, there is a second story at 501 Pine Street. As you can see, there's a second story above the garage. And this is a Google Earth view, positioning the view from that second story at 501 Pine Street, showing that to the right of the project that there would still be views. And this is showing that there's a window at the front that would still gain views of the ocean over the intersection. And here's the proposed project. And these are the views from 515 Pine Street that were submitted by the public commenter. And this is in front of their house. This shows that their view directly in front would be blocked by the project. However, staff took a Google Earth view, and here's the 890 McClellan, the subject property, and the second story would be over the existing first story. And the applicant would still retain views to the right of the project. And this is another view looking from 515 Pine Street over the proposed project, showing that there would still be views to the right of it. And these are the views from 529 Pine Street that were submitted by the public commenter, looking over at the project. And this is another view from the same public commenter. And you can see that to the left, there would still be ocean views. This is another photo from the public commenter showing that there would still be ocean views to the left. Again, those ocean views are still there to the left of the project. And this is a Google Earth image viewing, looking toward the ocean from 529 Pine Street and showing that there they still enjoy ocean views to the left, which is, here's the proposed project. However, they have views to the left of this house that's in front of them. The third finding for approval is that the project is substantially consistent with the city plans and design guidelines. It is consistent with the general plan in that the use would remain low-density residential, so would be consistent with the general plan land use designation. The project would be substantially consistent with guidelines for single-family dwellings in design review areas. Those guidelines are written in the staff report, and it would be substantially consistent with new Monterey area plan programs 2G, 2H, and 3A. And this is one of the guidelines shown here. You can see that this guideline is saying that single-family dwellings that are boxy or without any recognizable architectural character or detail shall be avoided. And this is very similar to what's existing now at 890 McClellan. And the applicant is adding visual interest by making the facade of the home modulated. And this shows a bay view, a bay window similar to what the applicant is proposing. And the fourth finding of approval is that the proposed finish, colors, materials, landscaping, lighting, fencing, and all other exterior features are appropriate. And staff found that they would be appropriate because they are high-quality materials that withstand the weather of Monterey. For example, the garage door and the stone veneer. And the colors would complement the forested nature of New Monterey. And this also shows the siding that cement plaster and wood siding, which are well suited for the Monterey weather. And also the metals, the standing seam metal roofing. The railing is also appropriate in that it complements the contemporary architectural style. With that, staff recommends approval of the architectural review permit as submitted. I'm available for questions, and the applicant is also here.
Any questions of staff?
I have a question, Fernanda. I couldn't see the roof height. I can see the max is 25 and it seemed ever so slightly. I just couldn't read the actual roof height that at the top of the document.
It is proposed to be at 25.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Are any of the neighbors contending that the entirety of their view is being taken?
So I have the comment from the owner at 529 Pine Street,
Mm-hmm.
and they said that their views of the bay and the city lights, they say that they would be losing approximately 75% of the bay and city light view.
Okay.
And then the other one, 515, I believe. I gave you the.
Yeah. I've
They
got
are claiming-
515. I don't think they. I'm sure we'll hear from them.
Okay.
But yeah, thank you.
When you were working with the applicant, were you working with the applicant? Did you have any interaction with them over this, one? And then two, did height come up in this, impacts on neighbors and things like that?
I worked with the applicant so that the proposal met the zoning district development standards. And it did. It meets the height limit of 25 feet. Other than that, we did not discuss views from neighbors.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Would the applicant like to make a presentation?
Hello, my name is Brent. I would like to request, if at all possible, from the chair to add some additional time so I can go through a little bit of a presentation, if that would be acceptable to you.
And our normal time limit is 2 minutes, or I know we cap comments at
for
2
the-
minutes.
We usually cap public comments for applicant. We usually try to limit it to 5 just for the interest of time, but it's to the discretion of the chair if he wants to extend that time.
Yeah. Try to stay in that range.
I will attempt to go
Yeah,
through as quick as
okay.
I can here. All right. Hello, good evening. Thank you for being here. My name is Brent. How about now? Is this working? Oh, that sounds a little better. All right. All right. Good evening. Hello. My name is Brent. I am the project owner along with my husband, Taylor, over here. A little bit about us. We've lived in Monterey since 2016. We moved here, quickly fell in love with the area, bought this house in 2018. 2020, at the height of a global pandemic, Taylor graduated from MPC nursing school, started working at the CHOMP ED. That was a good time. I myself work in surgery at CHOMP. So we try and treat Monterey as more than just a simple retirement or vacation destination. It's really more of a community for us. So it's just someplace we want to live and serve, hopefully for another 30, maybe 40 years for some of us over here, and then continue living on. But anyway, let's go ahead and get to my presentation. Next slide, please. Okay, so this architectural review has 5 parts. We're going to start with the design overview. We're going to look at neighborhood compatibility, talk about the view shed and privacy impacts, and look a little bit at the design considerations, and finally discuss the plan materials for this. Next, please. So design overview. Next. So first, we need to take a quick look at our current home. It is single story, 3-bedroom, 1 bathroom, little over 1,000 square feet, built in 1960, original condition when we bought it in 2018. Next, please. So a quick note about renderings you'll see here tonight. They are deemed accurate, but the planning documents govern if there are any discrepancies. Next, please. So here is a rendering of our home. And here you can see it in 360 degrees, so you can get a little bit better feel for the different features on the different side of it. And you see a little bit more of what's going on with the lot. And in case you didn't see the first time, we're going to go ahead and take you around the world one more time here. All right, next, please. So let's talk about the proposed design. It is a Northwestern contemporary style. It's 2 stories, of course, big reason we're here tonight. It's a little over 1,900 square feet of livable space. The first floor layout and all the trees are retained on this. So a quick note, one reason we went with the Northwest contemporary style, Taylor and I met in Portland, Oregon about 10 years ago. So it's just a little something we take with us. Next, please. So neighborhood compatibility. Next, please. Let's look at all the 2-story homes within 200 feet of our lot. It looks a little bit like this. We have a circle. All the blue homes are 2 or more stories. And the takeaway here is that the majority, 64% of the homes in the neighborhood there are already 2-story homes. So we're just moving into the majority. Next, please. And we can look at the livable square footage of those same homes within 200 feet. It looks a little like this. The individual numbers don't matter so much as more the average. The average livable square footage is about 1,600 square feet. Currently, at 1,000 square feet or so, we are in the 9th percentile of homes, and our proposal at 1,900 is in about the 68th percentile. So again, going more from outlier to average of the neighborhood. Next, please. So let's compare our project with one that was recently approved. We can look 2 doors down from us. 810 McClellan Avenue was unanimously approved by this body in 6/15/22, and compare that to our project that I'm presenting here tonight. So we can compare our livable square footage to the lot ratio. They're about 2,600 square feet, 44% of the lot. We're a little bit lower, 1,900 square feet, 32%. As for the planning numbers, the floor area in that ratio for them is looking about 2,300 square feet, 40%. We are 2,300 square feet and 39%. Very comparable there. And moving on to the lot coverage in that ratio, they're about 1,700 square feet, 29%. We are 1,700 square feet, 28%. Maybe you can see a theme forming here. And finally, we can move on to building height. They are 24.89 feet, whereas we are simply 25. Again, the point here is that ours is very similar to a project that was recently approved unanimously by this body. Next, please. So some common design elements we took from around the neighborhood. We have a metal roof. It is a double shed style with clerestory windows and a glass garage door. Additionally, we have a stone and wood facade. Those are common already, though. Next, please. So, big one. Let's look at the view shed and privacy impacts of our proposal. Next, please. So, the required finding for this committee is that the proposed project will not unreasonably impair the views, privacy, or living environment. Next, please. But first, let's talk about Monterey cypress trees. They are a native species, of course, hence Monterey in the name. They grow 3 to 4 feet in height per year. I have a grove of 7 of them on the southwest side of my lot. There are 4 15-inch and 3 8-inch trunks, as you can see on the survey document. They're currently 16 feet tall, and they were hedged by the previous owner. Now, my research for landscaping, everyone's pointed out to me that those are trees, not bushes, so they need to be allowed to grow as trees. That's probably what I'll do going forward. Next, please. So let's look at the view shed. Let's see what I have currently. So this is what the potential view is from my house. The blue outline is if there were no obstructions whatsoever, that's what our view would be. However, when we come back in and make a little pie chart out of this, we can see that indeed our view is not panoramic. It's in fact largely blocked, mostly by the roofs of our neighbors. If you're wondering what that looks like, standing in my living room looking out panoramic, this is what you see. We do again have that peak view to the right there. And then we need to move on. Let's look at what our proposal is. Again, the first story remains the same. So we have, again, that little one off to the right. Looking at the second story, you can see that pie chart cuts a little differently. The blue would be new view shed corridors we would gain on our second story. Here's what that is standing on my roof currently. Again, we retain that same view on the right, and we add those 2 small view corridors going down there in the middle and a little bit to the left in blue. Next, please. So now let's move on to our neighbors. 501 Pine Street, we can see from their first story, like Fernanda was showing you there, we do indeed impede their view approximately 15 to 20%, but as she pointed out, that is a 2-story structure, so it's important to also understand what it looks like from the second story, that in fact for that one, our proposal does not impede their view at all due to the elevation difference there. I think it's important to look at it in totality here to see how we would impact that. And then next, we can move on to 515 Pine, second story only. Their first story is a garage. We can draw a little pie chart for that here and see that, in fact, we would only impede approximately 5% of their view. Now, you don't have to take my word for it because they also submitted a public comment with this, which, as you can see, again, there's that 5% or so that our project would be impeding. And the rest, as those cypress trees mature in probably about a year or two, that's going to impede that view. Next, please. So to take a look back at that, that was a very constrained photo. The black outlines the width of that photo. So when you zoom out, you can see that they still retain substantial view corridors, even if they were not pictured. Next, please. And finally, we're going to move on to 529 Pine Street is a single-story home. Same situation here. And in fact, you can see that we are not impeding their view at all. And again, they also submitted a public comment to this, which you can see here from this photo. Again, we are not impeding their view. They retain their bay views through the back there. And again, as those cypress trees mature, that's going to impede their view. Next, please. So again, same thing here. When you zoom out back to their view shed, the black is what their photos show, but when you look a little further back, you can see what they have fully. Next, please. So altogether, I know this is a little bit of a mess, but the thing to take away here is that the neighbors' views are largely preserved, and that our views would then just be more on par with our neighbors, again, trying to go to the average. And now I do want to take a moment to address the 2 comments that were submitted publicly about this. They both claim to have spent well over a year and a half or more extensively and exhaustively searching for the retirement homes. But apparently one thing they missed was directly across the street, there's a grove of 7 cypress trees. And I don't know, that just doesn't quite compute for me. Next, please. So moving on to privacy concerns. If we can look at the front east elevation here, we compare our proposal to our current. We can see that there's similar placement of a lot of the windows. Our dining room window simply goes from the first floor to the second. For the living spaces, we retain the first and add that living space on the second. And note on that second one, that would actually give Taylor and I a little more privacy because currently we have a lot of people looking in and waving as they walk by on the sidewalk into our living room. Next, please. Moving on, right side, north facing elevation. Again, similar placement like we just talked about, the living room windows there. Then additionally, we have the bedrooms on the back. We are adding the master up above. And because I'm sure you're curious what the view is out of one of our bedrooms, it is the view of roofs. That's my neighbor's garage in front, and it's obscured glass on the cupola back there of that other house. Additionally, we are adding some windows. We have that second story kitchen window. And then also the mechanical room on the back would be obscured glass. That's not really an issue. Next, please. Moving around, rear west facing elevation of my home. Currently, there are no windows on the west elevation of our home. We are proposing a new lower bedroom window that is blocked by the bottle brush in our backyard that it will be retained in its position there. Then additionally, we do have a new master bedroom sliding door. This one's a little more complicated. So here's a view again, standing on the roof. So for note, that's 46 feet wall to wall from my house to my neighbor's house there. As you can see, the deck really blocks their lower windows, so I'm not too concerned about that, leaving simply the two small upper windows. Therefore, I believe this is a small to minor privacy impact at best, because again, their view is out towards the bay, not so much our back window. Next, please. And finally, the left south-facing side of our home. Again, like I talked about, similar placement for, we have shower windows with obscured glass that would be there. The rear bedroom goes from a window to a sliding glass door so we can have access back there. And the view out our current one is of those cypress trees that we've been talking so much about. And then we have some additional windows that we feel are not a privacy concern. Stairwell, I don't know what you guys do in a stairwell, but what we do, we really don't care if people see in or out on that one. Then we're going to be adding clerestory, garage, and skylight windows as well. Those are above head height, so Taylor and I would not be able to see out, and anyone who sees in is likely just going to see the ceiling or the wall behind. Next, please. So to summarize this, looking at the views, there are indeed some impacts to some neighbors. However, they all retain view corridors from their home. And we believe the impacts are reasonably small. Therefore, then also the privacy impacts would be minimal here. Therefore, our proposed project will not unreasonably impair the views, privacy, or living environment of our neighbors. And again, you don't have to take my word for it. This is also the planning staff independently agrees with this conclusion with their recommendation to approve. Next, please. Let's move on to some design considerations. Next, please. Starting with the New Monterey Neighborhood Association, of which I am a member. I did talk to the leadership there, and of course they told me they take no position on individual residential projects and just say you need to follow the New Monterey Area Plan. Next, please. So let's talk about that. New Monterey Area Plan, adopted 1991. This is 33 years young here, and they encourage you to have some south-facing windows, and as we talked about a minute ago, adding a bevy of those. They want you to retain existing trees, and we will be retaining all 8 trees in their native positions here. And then additionally, they want you to retain stone walls. We don't actually have any stone walls now. We will be adding stone walls to our project. Next, please. And moving on, citywide design guidelines, a mere 37 years old for these. And they suggest having your building mass perpendicular to the hill, which when you draw that in, ours is. And also on its steep slopes, they want your roof line to follow the hill. Ours does for the major shed roof side there. They want you to avoid boxy designs, like Fernando was saying. Do not do this, which hit awfully close to home when we saw this in the design guidelines, because yes, indeed, we live in the house that you're not supposed to have. So instead, they do make a suggestion of what you should have, like she was saying, looks a little something like this, which also feels familiar if you've been paying attention here, because again, our proposal looks like this. Almost a spitting image, one little difference. We do have that second story setback. I don't love it, but it is required by the zoning, so that's what we did. Next, please. And they do have a couple more, a little more minor here. They want consistent materials on all sides to avoid that Hollywood set look. And we do have consistent finishes on all 4 sides, as you can see when we line them up here. They want setbacks similar to neighbors. You can see the mass of our proposal is actually set back further from our neighbors, so give a little variation there. They want you to have a stepped roof line, which I do believe we've achieved here, as well as to integrate the garage design, which again, I feel we've successfully done. Next, please. All right, and next we're going to move on to materials, and rather than bore you with pictures, I've actually got an example here of what we're going to use. So this is what we would have here. So in the first level, from the floor level on down would be that taupe stucco. I think you kind of understand what that is. And then on bottom here, this is a natural slate stone. So that would go all the way from the floor level up to the windowsill. Above that, this is a wood look composite. So ideally it will hold the color a lot longer than natural wood. It shouldn't turn gray over time. The corner columns will be black to match the tube steel of the deck supports there. And on top, we're going to have a forest green metal roof. All right, I'd like to thank you all for your time. I really appreciate you listening to my presentation and hope you'll vote to approve. Thank you. I'm here for any questions, and also my designer Aaron's here if you have any technical questions for him.
Anyone have any questions of the applicant?
I have a very quick question. I think it would appear that it wouldn't matter if that roof elevation, the peak roof elevation was lowered, just based on the views submitted by the applicants, I mean, by the neighbors, which they can address as well later. But this often comes up. Could you lower the peak of that roof? It wasn't looking like it would help anything. Was that ever considered?
We did discuss it, and we tried to actually lower as much as we can, because on the double shed roof on the lower side, the plate height has already been lowered down to 7 feet. And as I'm sure you're aware, with code, a lot of times 7 feet is the minimum height or ceiling height you can have in a room. So we've already tried to lower that as much as possible.
Thank you.
Just one quick question on the cypress trees. You're fairly adamant about letting them grow tall?
That's the advice I've been given from everyone, that they are indeed trees, not hedges.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Any more questions for the applicant? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and open it up for public comments. And as you come up, please state your name and your relationship with the project.
And this one is 2.
Yeah,
My
we
name is
do
Mark
have,
Nelson. I'm the occupant at 515 Pine Street.
And I'm sorry if I could just interrupt you real quick. We do have a 2-minute.
We do 3 for public comment.
3 minutes for public comments.
Well, Brent went a little bit over, so pardon me if I do. Yes, we live at 515 Pine Street. I appreciate that Brent and Taylor have some interest in expanding their home. We don't really have an issue with that. From our home, however, we do have an issue with the height of the roof. With the shed style, it essentially adds a 3rd story in terms of the height. And so he's right that there are trees there that he could let grow, but that is not the entire issue for us. We still would retain a good portion of our view, even with the trees growing, if they reduce the roof height to either a low pitch or a flat roof, which I know is not, it's architecturally intriguing, but it would at least retain our views. And so our primary request is to take another look at the design. We don't necessarily say that they can't add a 2nd floor. We understand why they would want to do it. They're gaining a few little views, but we're actually losing more of a view than they're gaining. And so I would request that some of the neighbors' considerations are taken into account in approving this design, that we're going to lose a lot of value on our house. And we plan on being here for a long time as well, God willing. So I would just request that you take another look at this, and maybe some of what could be done is to move some of the addition to, depending on which directions you're calling it, to the rear of the home. If the addition goes up there, then nobody's views are impaired. I don't think. Maybe my neighbors would disagree with that. And the other thing I would say is that the analysis that Brent did and the analysis from the Google shots is essentially from Google Earth, which is taken over the top of our house. That's not what we see. Our view, the picture that I took, is from one part of our house standing out on our deck. Well, we don't live on our deck. We live from the inside. And from our kitchen and from our living room, the view that we see is essentially of the part that I gave you the picture of, which means it blocks the entire view. If I go way over on one side of our house and step out right out to the window and stand there, yes, I can see another view. But the primary view from the interior of our house, which is where we are and what we see and what other people buying it will see, is blocked by that addition. And primarily because of the extra roof height, because of the shed style on the roof. So I would request that the roof be redesigned at a minimum. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Steve Beely. I live at 529 Pine Street with my wife, Diane. As my letter said, we retired about 4 years ago. And this is where we want to end up. Our house is about 1,265 square feet. We just got done doing a remodel, finished about a year and a half ago, did quite a bit to the front, put all new windows in so we could see that view. We did think about going up 2-story, but we figured our view was fine for us, taken into consideration with the neighbors. One asks why we bought our house with those cypress. The gentleman that used to live there, older gentleman, lived there for years and years, he kept them hedged. And when we moved in, he continued to do that because he cared about the views of the neighbors. There's nothing we can do about it now. He was a pretty good neighbor about it. I guess our main concern is those trees getting higher. I am a retired general contractor, commercial. That first level of theirs can be raised up where it's more even with Pine Street, which if they switch the garage around, there's design things that could be done that raise up their first level to get views like we have. So they already have views like we have, but they're wanting to get a better view than we have and take away ours, which I don't think is fair. If this project goes through, if my wife wants to stay there, I'm probably going to look at a 2-story. Then I'm going to go up, start figuring out what I can do to get my view back. But I know how this all played. I've dealt with it for years, so I understand. But anyway, I would like them to go back and look at maybe a design. Everybody can have their views and maybe it can work out for everyone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Steve Nelson from 515 Pine Street. I'm sorry I don't have an audio-visual presentation to provide to you folks today. We didn't have time to prepare. This was news to us about a week ago. So it was also news to me that at 515 Pine Street, it's a 2-story home. We have a single floor livable space. Yes, there is a crawl space underneath us, which on the driveway side allows for parking, but it's a single-story home. The other thing that is news to me today is that Brent and Taylor, who've been very nice neighbors since they've moved in, and have maintained the tradition that Steve was mentioning of keeping those cypress trimmed, now say that they should be growing to the sky. And if that's the case, the amount of view shed that we will lose will be significantly more than what we were prepared to talk about today. So again, I would hope that you would look very closely at the shed roof aspect to this home, because it appears to me that without adding any additional square footage to the house and without increasing the views of Brent or Taylor at all, subtract substantially from the views from my home. And the views that we are interested in are not just the actual water view, but it's a very dynamic view of the hills and the mountains behind. And although this was stated as being facing north, in fact, the view from Pine Street is to the northeast. We get spectacular late spring and summer sunrises, which I would lose. The ability to see the sun come in and fill our living room and dining room and kitchen with the morning glow is really a special benefit. So anyway, I'm afraid I'm being told that my time is about up. Apparently, I can't filibuster tonight, which is fine. But I mean, I would like to be sure that you appreciate the fact that we are only a single-story home, that we can't go up, that the Google Earth pictures, I believe, are elevated from where we live and the views that we see. So I hope you take that into consideration. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon. My name is Diane Beeley. I live at 529 Pine Street. One of the reasons we purchased this home years ago was because it's one story. We are aging. We realize this is our permanent home. We don't want stairs. I was injured in an auto accident. I was hit by a car on my bicycle. I had my hip torn up. I had a lot of things happen to me. I don't want a two-story house. My husband may want one so he can get his views back, but that's not something I want or need or desire. When we found this home, we walked the neighborhood. We visited with the neighborhood. We visited with John. We asked intentions. We asked about the hedge. We asked about the climate, about what people did, who were the friendly ones. We really did our homework prior to buying this house. So the one story, the view was what we wanted and needed. And the answer back about their house being a 1960 home, which it is, it's a standard 60s home, 3-bedroom, 1-bath. That's what they bought. There was no surprises there. And yeah, it's a little boring, but that's what they did in the 60s. There's a lot of ways to change things without infringing on everybody's view and changing. And our home is small, but it's a perfect size home for seniors. And that's what we're looking at. And we think that you should also look at that to support us. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Salvatore Francis. I live at 880 McClellan Avenue, Monterey. I'm on the downhill side of Brett and Taylor. My wife and I really enjoy living there. We remodeled our home a number of years ago. City planning kept pushing us to build a second story. Like this young lady was saying here, my wife has all kinds of medical problems, so we couldn't do a second story. And we like the one-story style. And we have no problem with the project. Like I say, we don't have a view, but we're okay with it. We love our neighborhood. I grew up here in Monterey. My grandparents lived right over here on Van Buren. He was a local fisherman. So yeah, we've been here a while, and I'm going to stay here till I'm dead, and may not be that long. I'm hitting 70, man. It's it's just getting about ready to wrap things up. But yeah, we love the neighborhood. All our neighbors, all of them as well. We all get along great. We see a lot of dogs walk through the neighborhood. We enjoy that. And so it's just a great place to live in New Monterey. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm Mark Carbonero, 498 Pine Street. I live across from Taylor and Brent on across McClellan, and I'm on the corner of Pine and McClellan. I can't comment on the issue with the views. Some of the other neighbors have commented on, because what they're proposing doesn't impact us in any way, other than we think that the proposed remodel of that home will be a real positive for the neighborhood. Kind of bland as it is now, and the guys have come up with something that's very exciting. and will, I think, add quite a bit to the neighborhood. I understand the reason for them wanting to remodel, living in an older home as we do. You discover the inadequacies of earlier methods of construction. I'll just give you an example. The upstairs portion of our home is got 2 bedrooms. And for whatever reason, when that home was built, the people who built it decided that one of the bedrooms should have a clothing closet the size of a coat closet that you would have in your entryway. Makes no sense whatsoever, but maybe that's the way people lived in 1947. And we'd like to remodel our home, but we haven't been able to figure out a way to do that. So I understand the sentiments behind wanting to remodel, have something modern and something that's useful for people the way they live today. I think it's a beautiful design, and I hope that it can be successful, and maybe there's a way some of the issues with the view sheds for the other neighbors can be mitigated or adjusted in some way. But overall, I think it's an excellent project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Michael Metalopassi. I don't live in this area. I do spend quite a bit of time in this area, and I would like to speak in support of this project. Whereas there are minor issues with the view shed of some of the neighbors, what I'm really hearing is a lot of NIMBY. A lot of, we don't want our neighborhood to come into modernity. We want our neighbors to be forced to live in 1960. You guys have seen pictures of the property as it exists now. You guys have seen the renderings of the property as it would exist if this project moved forward. I don't think there's anything more important to the neighborhood and to the property values in general than letting these kinds of projects that have minor effects on the neighbors move forward so that property values go up, so that the value of all the neighborhood goes up, especially when it comes to a neighborhood that has more than 50% two-story homes. So thank you for allowing me this time to speak. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Manny Lee. I live at 543 Pine Street, right next door to Steve and Diane. I had not planned to speak, but my view will also be impaired somewhat. I live in a one-story house. There is no garage underneath, and I can't go up. I'm older. I'm here because my younger daughter and her family live here, and they have my only grandchild. I've only been here a year. Lord willing, I'll be here another 20. I don't know. I can't predict that. However, I have enjoyed it here. I have good neighbors, and I would love to be able to see the ocean and the lights and the mountains. I don't know what can be done except what has been proposed. I'm not an architect, but I would love to be able to see nature and the ocean. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Monette. I am an uphill neighbor, and I walk around in that neighborhood quite a bit. And there's a lot of one-story houses and a lot more two-story houses. I myself have a one-story house with a flat top roof, and I would never, ever suggest that type of roof to anybody. I have had nothing but problems with my flat top roof. Between the squirrels, the cats, the gravel, having to maintain it over and over. And I think this house looks amazing for the area. I think it will definitely improve my property value. and I'm in favor of it. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Aaron Tollefson. I'm a designer helping out Brent and Taylor on their residence. And I appreciate all the comments, both sides. Some good comments. And we have looked at roof pitch. That was one thing that we did discuss during the design concept. And there are many homes around that neighborhood that are probably a 6 and 12 pitch or steeper. And so we kind of picked the middle ground and took a 4 and 12 pitch to the house just to keep it in a more modest approach to the slope. So we were definitely keeping neighbors in mind during that process. So thank you.
Thanks.
There are no attendees on Zoom with their hand raised, but I will remind them that information on participating in this meeting and providing public comment, including remotely by Zoom or telephone, is on this meeting's agenda, which is online at isearchmonterey.org. Remote commenters will be muted until it is their turn to speak, and a timer will be shown on the screen. If you are connected on Zoom, the timer is accurate with no delay. In the chamber, we recommend keeping phones and devices muted to prevent audio interference with the meeting. Thank you for participating in your city government. And there are still no attendees with their hands raised online.
All right, nobody in the chamber, nobody online. We'll go ahead and close public comment and open it up for committee comments.
Well, I just had a question for the resident from 880 McClellan. Did you have concerns about the project? I'm sorry.
So public comments are
okay.
closed right now.
Well, you guys
He said
remember?
he was okay. Views are tough.
Views are tough.
It's not the first, and it's not the last time we're gonna encounter this. As you might have guessed from my initial question on the project, I think what we try to understand is if the totality of someone's view has been taken. I guess my biggest concern is with 515. I think that's the neighbor, not directly across, but somewhat adjacent. One of the problems with these presentations is that everyone tries to craft their comments and their presentations to support their view, and it's photographs get cropped in a particular way and renderings are presented in another way, and it's tough to get the whole picture without actually standing in these second stories, which is often why we continue a project in order to make site visits to the neighbors across the streets to really verify whether the entirety of their views are being taken.
Which we've done.
Which we've done several times. Yeah. I will say I do feel that there could be some horse trading on this one. I don't know the intention of really letting those cypress grow. I get it. I think they were probably originally, I get that cypress are considered trees, but it looks to me like this was very intentionally planted as a hedge, given the arrangement of the trees on the survey.
Be my guess as well, but
yeah,
but you don't know. Yeah.
There's no way of saying it. It doesn't look like a natural or organic arrangement of trees, and that this could very well have been planted as a hedge.
Cypress aren't the best for that if you're doing that anyway, but
yeah. I've had several folks in my neighborhood that have had cypress in a similar arrangement that have just gotten out of control. I mean, they grow rather tall. It might be a nice consideration for the owners to consider continue topping those trees for their neighbors. It seems like something you could do. But I guess my knee-jerk reaction is that it's likely important for us to look at the views.
I think with the number of concerns that might warrant a visit.
Agreed. Yeah.
Typically what happens in that case though is some of the residents will typically what will happen sometimes in those cases is some of the residents will invite us in a session to come to say a deck or something like this, so we can just viscerally experience what might be lost or not. What we can't say what our outcome is from that. We do try and be fair to all the residents and the neighbors. I think generally we are a body that likes to approve because these improvements are generally very good for the neighbors. However, views are difficult, and so I think it is important for us to see that. I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on the horse trading. I don't know if we need to do that right now or we could do that later.
It just struck me as an easy accommodation for the neighbors, I guess. I guess, is your intention to let them grow because you like, well, I don't want to turn it into a dialogue.
Yeah, it's
but,
not, well, and I mean, I think they are generally right in front of the house, not.
Well, I think for some of the neighboring structures, they are somewhat oblique and block and would block a window.
Which we can verify in that. I was curious if you were thinking architecturally, but you were thinking with the trees.
Yeah, with the trees. I think the architecture, again, it's a handsome house. If there were a switch to the house, you could probably take those metal roofs down to 3 and 12, but looking at the imagery that's been provided, I don't know that really opens up views per se.
That was
lowering the ridge line like a foot or a foot and a half. It doesn't really do anything.
Match the other one,
yeah,
something like that. You lose the clear story. That it doesn't actually improve what's lost. So I think we are leaning towards a continuance and a visit. Is that fair to say?
Mm-hmm. I do have one question. I don't know if we can go back. I'm wondering what the interior ceiling height is for the second story at the highest point.
Oh, it's not coming. I have to look at the
I'm sorry,
exhibit.
because I couldn't see it on the drawings. It was too small.
So the finished floor elevation is 105 and the plate elevation is 113. So that's 8 feet, 8-foot ceilings on the second story.
Okay, that's fair.
You'd probably add 5 feet. You'd probably add 5 feet to that with the vault.
With the vault, and then you could lower the vault perhaps.
The highest point. Yeah, you could lower the pitch of the roof. Could go down to a 3 and 12 if they wanted to. Do we need to make a motion?
We do, I think, right?
Yeah, so I think it might be beneficial to, as you mentioned earlier, to just get an idea of what permissions we'll have to view from the neighboring properties before we kind of go that route.
Visually noticed a bunch of nods and thumbs up.
I'm observing that as well at this point. So great. Yeah. It sounds like we want to move to a continuance to another meeting, and then also agendize a field trip to view the impacts. Yep. So our next ARC meeting will be in the new year, and that's going to be January 15th. But given the holidays, that's a pretty quick turnaround for staff to prepare a staff report and also coordinate a field trip. So I think if we want to stick with a date certain, it would probably be best to go to the first February meeting as February 5th.
'15th is completely out of the question.
Yeah, I'm around on the 15th. I know it's.
I don't want to put staff under pressure, but I also hate to continue an applicant for an entire month. So,
sure. If we want to, the 15th works.
Because it's not, staff doesn't have to update their staff recommendations per se.
We would just recap what happened at this meeting.
Yeah. Fernanda, does that?
Fernando will be out.
Staff in this situation.
Fernando will be in South America on the 15th.
Oh,
but
great.
we can still carry on. But yeah, we can work with the January 15th meeting. if we want to continue it to a date certain, and then we can agendize the field trip from there.
Yeah, I guess, what is the procedure there? So would the 15th be the field trip and then the
So
meeting?
the 15th would be the meeting. So we've kind of done it multiple ways. In the past, we've done it where we hold a field trip on the Monday before the meeting. And then there's been other instances where we had the field trip just hours before the actual meeting. I'll defer to the committee on if they want to. That would be January 13th would be the Monday before if we wanted to do a field trip on that day.
What times are those?
Typically, we do them at the same time as the meeting, around 4:00.
I would open it up to the committee. I personally prefer a bigger block of time on the same day rather than two separate meetings 2 days apart. Like, how would the committee feel, staff as well, about a meeting like an hour before the actual? Are you guys sure?
I prefer that.
Does that give us enough time if we're going to say 3 or 4 different viewpoints?
Yeah, I think we'd probably want to allow ourselves at least an hour on site. So,
Okay, so, sorry, so not the 13th, you want to lump it all together on the 15th?
unless any of
But
you
then-
object, but so we'd be there at like 2:45 or.
And then are we meeting on the 15th? Because usually staff puts together a few photos from that, writes up something.
Yeah, I mean that's typically what we would do. We can also, do a more general summary of the events of the field trip. Obviously, the primary purpose of the field trip is to benefit the committee and aid them in their decision, and assuming
So
they will
quick
be
write-up
present.
Would be sufficient, could be done.
I would encourage a little bit more than an hour, just since we have to travel from the site to here for the 4:00 meeting, because that is a regularly scheduled meeting that has to happen at 4. So, maybe a 2:00.
Currently, I'm fine with that.
Maybe a 2:00 field trip might be sufficient, and then a 4:00 meeting.
Okay.
Someone wants to pack that all into a motion.
Yeah.
I move that we continue the discussion of the application ARP 24-0127 for preliminary architectural review until the architectural review committee meeting for the 15th of January 2025, with a field trip scheduled before that on that same day.
At 2:00.
That's what.
So we have a motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. All right, and well, I guess this isn't a decision, so it's not going to be appealed. So, all right. Thank you to applicant, staff, and members of the public that commented. Hopefully
Thank
we'll
you, everyone. Yeah.
get this project on its way.
I need to leave. If that's, I need to leave to pick up my
Okay.
kid. If that's, are we
Okay.
wrapped up?
All right. You gone? Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Any staff reports or?
Oh. Well, now we have an item scheduled for the January 5th meeting.
Oh, we didn't have anything scheduled?
No,
Oh,
and I won't be here,
you won't be.
but Levi will.
Okay.
I will not be zooming in.
Yeah. And now I get why Levi was trying to pushing for that, and I screwed that up. My bad. Okay.
Do we have
Progress.
what, how
So
you guys come to
we-
that work?
We're done with updates.
Okay. So I'll adjourn the meeting, and I assume you can talk to staff about arranging access.